historically grounded work and your appreciation of the work of Craig Kaufman and Dwayne Valentine. In fact, the things you're pointing out are the things that they were trying, not so much to suppress, but to make invisible, and you're bringing them forth. And that's one of the real aspects of this work that differentiates it from its influences.
Part of my investigation has been exploring the dramatic, contrasting colors in one piece.
With the emphasis on the word dramatic, because Craig and Dwayne and those folks continue to tend to minimize, not to suppress, not to eliminate, but to minimize the dramatic, to have their work and the effects of their work creep up on you. You start with those effects, you bring them forth, you make them apparent. Your work is more viewer-friendly in that regard than theirs is, which is neither good nor bad, it's just different.
Strive for is in the application of the different colors to have a complete blending or seamless continuity from one color to the other without seeing a proper demarcation, so that allows you to then experience the colors as a whole, even though they're three separate colors.
Exactly. So you see your eye moves without seeing a juxtaposition. It sees simple change, almost like the sky changing.
Right. My dad's 1966 candy apple red Corvette in Puerto Rico when I was a child, and it was candy apple red like you see here with all the flakes, and he hand painted his cars too because he was a car buff, and it always had that beautiful little chrome fender, so there's a certain thing that draws me to that. But of course it's not, the work is non-referential, and it's just simply form, and the reason I created this pop-up is to add another element of three-dimensionality and make the work a little bit more complex in that regard.
A lot more complex, interestingly enough, because although it seems contrasting, almost contradicting the continuity of the original surface, because of its reflectivity, there is a continuity. It brings the work, you see even more, that it brings the work itself into the room by bringing the room into the work.
There's another element that I really tried to explore too with this body of work, and it is not only the effect of the environment and the light upon the piece, but the actual physicality of the piece, and I kind of want you to touch it. And so I really like being drawn to it physically, not only just the perceptive aspect of the light interacting with it, but the physicality of it.
Which is not something you find in the work of the artists who influence you. It's not so much that their work is resistant to the desire to touch, but it simply doesn't invite the touch. It is enough that it hangs before you. This work, in its eccentricities, invites you to put your hand on something, which is exactly the opposite, say, of a James Turrell room where you're invited to stick your hand through nothing. So this reverses that.
Interestingly, it is not a mold, technically, that these are cast from, like resin. Resin, you have a mold, you pour the resin into the mold. This is what they call tooling, and it is a shape that is made out of wood, and you put a plastic sheet in it and you blow it in an oven, so that each piece actually turns out a little different, because while the outer perimeter might be the same, effect of the oven heat on the plastic differs depending on each piece, how long you have it in the oven, how much compression you put on the top of the surface of the piece. You can have all different variables, not only in the shape of the perimeter, but the process itself of blowing the plastic then produces differences.
This is true. I notice of a number of artists inheriting from the light space and finish people. This is the kind of thinking that Larry Bell, for instance, would manifest in his work, but he does it in a far subtler way. There is a greater embrace of at least a low level of spectacle in this work. And of course, you set yourself up the challenge how to make this work lively and pretty and overtly surprising without making it crowd-pleasing, maintaining its elegance and its self-possession. It's not an issue of whether the juxtapositions are smooth, but what they are.
And that's why, depending on where you experience the piece, it tricks you a little bit. Because am I really looking here at gold, or am I really looking at purple? And where does the demarcation begin on one and end on the other? It's really blurred, and I think that's been a lot of fun for me to try to achieve that.
That makes the work closer to Craig's, in fact, than to Dwayne's or Larry's or that kind of thing. You're still thinking as a painter. This work is conscious of addressing not only paintable issues, but paintable issues are in here, the way they're not in Irwin or Bell, but they were in Kaufman. And in fact, to Tony DeLapp to a certain extent as well. Process, the bowing effect, the effect of plastic mutating and changing produces a completely different effect in each corner. Each corner is different, each angle is different, and it creates a piece, a shape that feels like there's that element of the artist's hand in it. No two pieces are alike, because the surface is higher in some corners in some pieces, lower in others, and so you get that more organic feel in it. I think maybe in terms of the irregularity of the shapes and the hand-made feeling of the shape that's more organic. Right.
That Tony DeLapp's work has that organic feeling in the edges and the sculpting of the actual canvas.
And it's ironic because you do the same thing in a very different way that he does. He's thinking as a painter, but in order to do these strange things with surface and with the perception of color and contour, he has to do sculptural things to the support.
Sculptural elements, the background, yes.
Yeah, and that's what's happening here too. It's almost as if you've married Craig to Tony. That's where you introduce the subtle manipulations that keep us coming back, that keep our attention riveted to the object for extra information, for a constant unfolding of information. You've allowed in, you've encouraged a process of discovery. So ultimately, you could take this and ultimately you could wind up baking a car. That's an analogy that you've inherited from the original Light and Space people, but there's also the aspect of food, of baking, and of these often dessert colors.
Candy, candy, ice cream.
This is the first time I'm seeing any of this latest series in the, I guess you could say, flesh. Having seen them in photographs and having seen the previous pieces, I didn't think I'd be surprised. I thought I'd be intrigued, engrossed, pulled in, but I'm actually surprised by the dazzle of the color, the way the color occupies both the surface and the, you might say, the cutaneous and the subcutaneous aspects of the pieces, and their glister, the way they suck in light, the way they suck in light and hold it in, and then radiate it at a different rate than they pull it in. Also, particularly with this piece, I'm fascinated with their almost perverse asymmetries, the way they start to suggest something, pull away from that, suggest something else, pull away from that, almost seem to be crawling like caterpillars across the wall. Now, of course, I'm using a lot of representational metaphors for work that is supposed to be entirely non-objective. Nothing is entirely non-objective. You know, when Frank Stella says, what you see is what you see, well, that's what I see. Or that's what I feel. Maybe that's more accurate. I feel these things crawling across the wall, but very slowly. I'd expect to leave here, come back a few days later, have this one, for instance, move to the right a few feet, having made its way that slowly. Because they're asymmetries, they seem muscular, as if they're in motion, they're contracting and expanding. Again, that's a feeling as much as a visual observation. The visual observation is especially in that taking in and radiating light.